So this is just going to be a general first impressions of how I feel about the first volume of Berserk, instead of more of a recap and review orientated review, how most people do it. So let's jump right into it and I'll explain as I go. So first off, I want to start with the artwork, specifically around the beginning of the chapters. We get some beautifully drawn detail here with the tentacles and the abs and the striations in the leg muscles. And on top of that, this absolutely gorgeous shading that we see on Guts and this demon woman. And this continues on in chapter 2, where we get some more very realistically drawn detail of Guts. We really see the highlights pop out, especially in his teeth, his sweat, and his reflections on his arm attachment. And this picture of Puck. We need to talk about this picture because this picture is drawn more like a portrait rather than a manga panel. And I think it really stands out as one of the more better drawn panels, especially when it comes to the higher quality panels at the beginning of chapters. So in chapter 3, we see this even more incredibly drawn, detailed intro to the chapter, where we see this monk looking guy. We see every single wrinkle on his face. We see he's missing a few teeth, and the details given to all of these characters at the beginning of the chapters really immerses you into the world. And on top of that, we get the next page in which we see in brutal detail this woman getting executed, and the disassociation we see from the executioners, who have to pretty much, what I assume, do this almost on the daily. And this is not only for just 1 or 2 pages, but this goes on for quite a bit in the 3rd chapter, where we see these detailed drawing of their faces, which is shaded incredibly. And on top of that, we see this guy, who is drawn absolutely perfectly. I love this panel and how everything is drawn. And this drawing even goes on to how we see the female with her head cut off and gritting her teeth. And this goes on and on for like, I think, 2 more pages, and then we get to the end, which is actually another topic I wanted to talk about on this panel, which is the social structure of the world. So before, we see how these people are being executed in public, and there's a sort of frightened fear and sorrowness on their face of, this is what will happen to us if we go against the perceived religion of the entire state. So what we really see here is a prime example of how these people in the lower class are being abused and really taken advantage of by the higher class, or what they're calling demons. So we get a intro to the hierarchy, how do you say that word? To the hierarchy of the world of Berserk. And the world is not afraid to really show you just how tragic it is. And I really want to accentuate that with this one panel right here, where Colette hops out of the carriage just for 1 second, and immediately she's stabbed and killed. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Colette comes back possessed and then decapitates her own father. But what's really surprising about this world is that no matter how dark and tragic it is drawn beautifully, and we get a real sense of immersion into this world with how these castles and these paths are drawn with a real sense of dimension to them. These houses, they're just drawn so insanely like medieval that it really brings you into the tragic nature of this world. And these cones and everything, all of these medieval structures and designs from architects, they're really accentuated to really bring you into the Berserk world. I mean, I've said it like 5 times already, but it just, I really want to bring this out because I don't really want to go much into this in future reviews. So I just wanted to bring this up so that you know about it right now. And the attention to detail in this panel right here, especially when we get to this person's their underground layer. I don't really know what to call it, but we really see the attention to detail in all these different skulls being drawn of different humans, maybe animals, and this person claims to be a physician, so it'll help explain some of this stuff but not all of it, so there is still some mystery there. And I really want to talk about the title for a minute. It's called Berserk, and at the end of chapter 1 we see Puck, what seems to be, he seems or she seems, whichever one you prefer, to be kind of shocked that this man is capable of going on such a rampage, especially from the world that Puck comes from, which is not nearly as violent, which is something we hear Puck say, I think later in the story or earlier, I'm not sure, but I know that Puck definitely does say that she can't get accustomed to this violent world that Guts lives in. So we clearly see that she's distraught by this when we see the snake boy talk about how he doesn't want to die and he wants to live, but yet Puck is pretty scared, but Guts doesn't really seem to care. And it's pretty much very apparent that Puck is pretty frightened by this. So speaking of Puck, another thing I wanted to talk about was just how these elves' power works. So Puck does a little dance, and then we see that this actually ends up healing Guts. So I want to know if there's actually a limit to these powers. Are they just for healing? They said, well, not they, but Puck said that their troop leader got his head cut off by bandits. So what's that really about? And they can sense people's emotions and they can even make them happy. So is there some sort of emotional healing connection with the elves? And I saw the Black Clover anime, so I know just how really in-depth these elves and their backstory can go, even though that's in a whole nother different universe, and I won't get into that. But just in general, speaking of elves and their fantastical powers in this universe, is there an attack spell that we could see to really make Guts like hit another level of badassery, where they create some sort of Megazord by using Puck's attack powers and Guts's sword or something? I really want to know more about that. But anyways, let's actually get into talking about the relationship that Puck and Guts seems to have. So in the beginning, we don't really get anything much about Guts. We're not really introduced to him in any sort of typical shonen way or seinen way, but I haven't really read much seinen at all. I've only really watched shonen animes. But we see here that Puck really, we don't really get anything out of Guts unless Puck really, like, he really pokes him and annoys him to really get some information out of it. So we see here that Puck notices a bunch of stuff, but Guts isn't really answering other than his name. But then, as Puck keeps on going more and more, also this panel looks really sus, but whatever. But yeah, as Puck keeps on poking him more and more, Guts starts to tell us a little bit more about himself, and we really get to see the tiniest glimpse of some of the markings and little nuances that make up Guts' backstory and how he really came to be. So even though that Puck is really prying, the only way that Guts is really going to say anything is if he honestly feels like it's worth somebody's time to know about the little information he's willing to devolve about himself. So we really see that in these upcoming chapters, especially we see a bit of the elves, not upcoming chapters, in the upcoming panels. So we really see here how the elves really sense emotions, and we hear Puck saying that it's rage, sorrowness, and pain all flowing into him/her. And another thing I wanted to talk about all this pain and sorrow and Guts' feelings is his morals. So in this panel right here, this is right after Colette starts to attack Guts after decapitating her father. And we see Guts really hesitate in this moment as Puck is kind of yelling at him, because he seems to be kind of in a place where he realizes that this person was once someone who tried to help him, And because of what he's gotten done, or what's been happening to him and what's being done to him in this current situation, that this caused the death of someone who tried to help him. But in the end, he still ends up killing her, and we really see that he doesn't really care at all. He kind of hesitated for a minute, but his whole beliefs go back to really, it doesn't really matter who gets in my way, because it's my fight. Who cares if anybody really gets involved in it, since they're just small fry, they're just ants to me, and I need to keep on walking this path that I have to in order to kill all these demons, and I can't really let one death bother me. So we really get a sense into his desensitized nature and everything, and that's really interesting because it brings out the mystery of Guts and who he really is and how he became so desensitized to these ways, and going on about his ways and everything. How are these powers a thing, dog? What is up with his hand where it just falls off, and he has these explosives, and this arm attachment is also a crossbow, but not a single crossbow. It can shoot multiple at one time apparently, and I don't really get it, but it's something absolutely crazy. And I want to talk about how does Guts' technology and his arsenal fit into this world? Is Guts a part of this world? Did he come from somewhere else? Does he have some kind of magical abilities to have all these futuristic stuff? I don't really know. But without furthermore, let's finally get into what we really came to talk about. His goddamn sword. Oh my god. This sword is absolutely insane on Bloodborne, Dark Souls type level of insanity. It is something that I have been completely obsessed with, because we see that people clearly are reacting to this sword in a very grotesque manner, as if it's something they've never seen before ever. And that really intrigues me, because in a sort of fanatical world as Berserk, we don't really get much info about any of this. We only really see that it's too big to be called a sword, and people are freaking out over it, and it's often referred to as a heap of raw iron and far too heavy and thick to carry around. So does Guts have some kind of magical ability with this sword? Does he have some kind of inhumane power? Does this relate to the elves, and maybe the elves have built this? Does this sword kind of draw Puck and Guts to one another because maybe there's some kind of connection with the elves? There's just so much to be desired for, and if this does not end in some kind of extraterrestrial being making the sword and handcrafting Guts, okay, I'm joking, but there's so much lore that could be explored with just this sword alone that it's too much to cover, especially with the amount of info we only get in volume 1. So I also want to talk about how what does this mean? The Black Swordsman, and he's been hunting us apostles. We don't really get anything about the apostles. We don't learn anything about them. We only really know that there's some sort of protected class, because we see the same guy, he's being approached to in some sort of big venue dining hall area in a building. So it really helps me visualize what these apostles can be, and the sort of distance between someone like Guts and someone like the snake guy, the apostles. So lastly, I want to talk about the brand of sacrifices, because the brand of sacrifices is something that we literally have no idea about, and all we know about it is that demons and spirits chase him because of the brand of sacrifice. We see here that they even attack him when he's sleeping. And I also think that maybe him always having his right eye closed also has something to do with just how the brand of sacrifices really conflicts the user, and maybe takes a part of them as a sacrifice in order to wield the powers of the brand of sacrifices. So it makes me think that maybe Guts doesn't have a right eye, or maybe there's some kind of special power that his right eye has, similar to Gojo Sensei in Jujutsu Kaisen, how he opens his eye and there's all this domain expansion, all that stuff. So maybe there's something to do with how Guts always has his right eye closed and the brand of sacrifices, and his powers to wield a sword, and his relationship with the elves. I don't know. The brand of sacrifices has so much to talk about, yet we don't get any information about it. All we know is that the brand of sacrifices summons the demons and the spirits, and that's really all the info we get. So with that being said, I'm really excited to continue on to volume 2 and see where this story goes. I probably won't be going into as much detail in future videos because I want to really focus more on the actual events that happen in the story rather than being first generally exposed to Berserk. So with that being said, I'll give the series right now maybe want to give it maybe 7.2 out of 10. It has a really good start, and it has a lot of stuff that is yet to be desired in the series, but I really hope that they pull it off nicely, and I'm really excited to see where the series goes. And with that being said, hope y'all have a great day, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out.